adventurers, and welcome back to another episode of the Awkward Dungeon Master. This week, I wanted to talk to you guys about my process of building campaigns. So, big topic, but hopefully I won't take too long to cover it. One of my friends was talking about making homebrew campaigns a little while ago, and I told him that I don't write out my entire story before we start running the campaign. I like to start with an idea, and then I write it in chunks based on where my characters within the game are going and based on their needs. And he kind of gave me a weird look. So I thought I would cover the topic on my channel, because why not? I'm going to go ahead and use the current home game that I am working on right now, that I have 6 players currently in, and everything takes place under the ocean, so underwater. It's a completely new setting that I've never dealt with before, and as far as I know, there's no published D&D content that has a campaign that's completely undersea or underwater in any way. I know that there's small things here and there where that kind of stuff happens. There are rules for like combat underwater. When I start my campaigns, I always start with some kind of idea. And before we did this one, I had 3 separate things that I was willing to run for my players, and I kind of asked for their feedback and what they would be interested in playing. The first option was this underwater campaign, and the second option was a campaign that was going to take place more in the wilderness, and everyone was going to play as monster races in kind of a uncivilized area in the world that I've slowly been piecing together in my homebrew campaigns. And then the last one I was going to offer to run was Tomb of Annihilation, because I've run that book already, and it's fucking amazing. If you get the chance to run Tomb of Annihilation, it's really a great campaign book. So check that out if you have not. It's lovely. But as you can guess, my players went with the underwater option. Everybody was really excited that it was different, and I think they just wanted to play in a space that was unfamiliar and new and had some possibility to it. So I said at the beginning of this that I always start with kind of a basic idea for the campaign. These are my original notes for this campaign. It's just over 2 pages that I printed out. It's all typed up. It's not even in a smallish font, just so that it's easy to glance at whenever I'm going through stuff. The entire campaign takes place underwater, and I wanted it to be split up into almost countries or continents the way that land masses are. So I have this referring to it as the 7 seas, which people talk about things in that aspect in our world. So I thought it was a nice way to look at it. But because of that, the way to say this where it will make sense. The original idea for the campaign was that there were 7 seas, and originally there were 7 gods, one god kind of reigning over each sea. And one of them was the king of all of the gods, so very similar to Greek mythology. But in the last few hundred years, a presence had kind of taken over, overthrown all of these gods, and just changed life under the seas as everyone knew it. Things have changed. Seas that had a lot of geothermal activity have gone completely dead. Countries began warring with each other who previously had lived in peace, and strange things rose up from the depths and started to attack the people of the ocean. And this god was referred to as the Ever-Burning One. My idea was that it was kind of a demon that rose up and is trying to ascend to godhood. In this current campaign, he's already done that, but in the past, that was his goal, was to ascend to godhood. And by doing that, he sowed discord among all of the other seas about the 7 gods that previously existed, found ways to convince them that he was the one true God, and that he would save them from the chaos that was beginning within all of the oceans. That is the basis for this whole campaign. That one idea is what I built everything off of. There are 7 seas. I have all the names here. It's not really that big of a deal. And then I had the capitals lined out for each one. And each of the gods' names, what they reign over. I also had some basic history for the ocean, so Mycenaeans, which show up in a lot of fantasy, folklore type stuff, so there was a little bit of basis for that. The general idea was that they were the original children of the gods, so they're kind of considered sacred. With there being 7 seas, the idea was that the 7-armed sea star was kind of a religious representation of that unity between those 7 gods and the court of the sea and all of that. So the symbol of the 7-armed sea star is kind of a universal symbol for the religions of the ocean and tying them all together and how they all kind of intertwine. And that is the one piece that I kept from the old ways that carried through into the new age of the ever-burning one, is that for some reason 7-armed sea stars are kind of revered and respected and looked at as a source of good luck. You know, leave little bits and pieces in there if you can about things. I will also point out, this is only the 2nd campaign I've ever run, and I've definitely grown a lot as a dungeon master in the last 3 to 4 years. The players I have right now are so interested in puzzles and political intrigue and role play that I have really been able to dive into fleshing out this world and giving it some depth. I had them start in Paris Leon, which is the capital of Thonas, which is the sea that they met in. When I did that, I had kind of a map of that city. That was just kind of a basic one in my notes so that I had a general idea of how the city was laid out. And I had some basic NPCs. So like the original bar that everyone kind of tied in together at is called the Mermaid's Crossing, and it was run by a mermaid named Pearl, who's actually kind of shisty, and there's some shady business going on there. And she's a little bit grumpy and surly too. She was a little sassy with the characters on several occasions toward the beginning. And we were able to tie everyone's backstories in such a way at the beginning that it was kind of easy to pull them together, with the exception of maybe 2 characters. So I wanted an inciting incident that broke into the city and kind of caused everyone to have to come together. So I had a deep sea drag fishnet that came through and actually tore up part of the city, and the characters had to save a little boy who got trapped underneath a building, and a lot of people got pulled up in the net with pieces of broken building and other sea life off the floor of the ocean in this particular region. So the characters really had to be resourceful and work at getting those people out of the net, which they did manage to do, but there was a possibility that they wouldn't. And then they would be looking at rescuing people as well as trying to figure out the source of this destruction that's kind of invading their part of the ocean. So there's that. It's really more complicated than that, but it dives into some stuff that my characters don't know. So I can't get too much more into detail on this. If you guys really like this material as I'm talking about it, then please let me know down in comments, and maybe we'll start doing some kind of campaign diaries type things. We'll bring some characters on every now and then, some of my players, to talk about their experiences at my gaming table and how they're interacting with each other and the content that's being put in front of them. So if you want to see more of that, please let me know on social media or down in the comments so that I know that you guys want to see that, and we will make some of that content. So I said I start with a basic idea. So we have the basic idea, which is that one demon that rose to godhood and overthrew the original 7 gods, and the inciting incident which kind of pulled all the characters together in a way, it's almost a forceful kind of way. And I know I've talked to some of my friends, we did lose a character in the process of doing that as well and gained somebody else, because my husband's troublesome and gets a little too into role-playing his characters at times. But if you guys want to hear that story sometime, we can definitely do that too. We've covered it pretty extensively on my friend's podcast. That podcast is called Metagamers Anonymous. If you guys are ever interested in checking it out, we do talk about our home games and the games that we run at the Burrow pretty regularly in there, as long as a bunch of other really cool stuff about building content and working with players and different personalities at the table and stuff. So I'll throw a link to that down below so you can check it out. So also typically in my campaign, I like to have 2 to 3 kind of mid-level questy type things that the players can do together. And in this case, I was able to really pull a lot of character backstory into it, as well as pulling in pieces of the campaign and introducing kind of the main point through that. So one of the characters has a brother who is a knight. She has a noble background, so that's been really interesting to kind of delve into as well. Her parents are jackasses, but it's made things interesting. But her brother at one point went missing on a mission. When he didn't show back up, she decided she was going to go looking for him. And this was all part of her backstory previously, but I was able to tie it into the main campaign with some information about the seven gods, because the king in their current ocean was starting to develop some suspicions about what was going on with their current religion, and it was taking a lot more power within his kingdom than he thought was appropriate, and it's getting kind of inconvenient for him, which they hadn't gotten into too much yet, but the Church of the Ever-Burning One is almost a little bit culty at times, and it's not very subtle, and that was done deliberately. They're kind of haughty about it, entitled. It's crazy. It's been an interesting thing to play with as we go through this campaign. But there's that. When her brother went missing, they eventually were able to get some information from the Crown Guard about where he had been sent, and that was to the capital of... Give me just a moment here. Kakova. I can remember the capital city, but not the ocean it's in. So they were going to Pavlopetri, which is the capital city of Kakova, which is that ocean. It has within it several ancient ruins of the Mycenaeans, so it is considered to be kind of a religious point within the oceans, the heart of the ocean, if you will. And they have there also the Great Library, which is the largest collection of knowledge within the seven seas. And the king had requested 3 books from that library that contained within them information about the seven gods. And her brother was sent to retrieve these books. Now, there was somebody else at the castle, another knight, who had an interest in getting back at her brother because he was jealous of him, and also stopping him doing this, going to get these particular books. So he had him turned into this crazy creature. I used a miniature it's a Pathfinder miniature, but it's called a moon beast, and I thought it was a pretty cool thing because it's pale and tentacle-y and kind of really creepy, crazy looking. And her brother was kind of hiding out and trying not to get killed in the outskirts of the city and trying to figure out a way that he could change back, come to the castle, figure out why that had happened to him, and complete his mission. When they found her brother, they were able to kind of put some of this together, and they went ahead of him to try and get to the books before he did. There was a lot more stuff in there, but like I said, I write it in chunks. So I wrote the inciting incident to get the group together, and then I wrote the whole thing about her brother, and then we wrote a interaction with her parents because they stopped there before they moved on. And then there was a dungeon that I put between the two places so they would see her parents. And after they got there, but before they got to the city of Pavlopetri, they came upon a witch, a sea hag named Auntie Sea Spinner, who gave them like a tiny little bit of information, almost like a prophecy, that she said to them. I have it here somewhere. Let me see. Auntie said to them whenever she first met them, before they parted ways, "Lost ones found, prices paid, threads wound, fates made." But she said that they needed to look for the ancient knowledge beneath the sea. So they came upon a kelp bed at one point, and they spent a little while in there kind of looking around since it was on their way. And they came upon a disc in the ground, which was actually the entrance into an ancient... It was set up kind of like a tomb. It was a dungeon in the shape of a 7-armed sea star, and each arm of it was one piece of a prophecy that I gave to them, which is really long, so I'm not going to make you listen to it right now. And that gave them pieces of the overarching story. And essentially it told them there were 7 gods, and they fell. Monsters are going to come back. The sea is doomed unless they can overthrow the ever-burning one. And to do that, they have to find the lost gods, restore their crowns, and there are 7 relics that can help them do that, which were the original weapons of the gods. At the end of that, there was a sequence where they had to place all the pieces of the prophecy into hidden parts of the mosaic floor at the heart of the dungeon where they came in. And when they did that, it transferred them back in time, and they met somebody who could help them find the books they needed, because little known to them, if they had not found this and gone through this whole thing, if they hadn't figured that out, it would have left out this really big piece. They would have been able to figure out down the road that the books that they were going to get were not the right ones. It would have been pretty obvious when they got them, if they were able to procure them, that they were not what they should be looking for. And then they would have had to do some extra sleuthing and stuff to get to the point that they needed to be at. And we would have missed this super cool flashback. It's pretty intense, so it was cool. I enjoyed it. It's honestly, I was more proud of this dungeon and that flashback than anything else I have ever done DMing in the last 4 or 5 years. I don't want to do the math right now, but it came out really cool. So they were transferred back into the past in a kind of ghostly manner, but they figured out that they were able to kind of interact with some things, which was interesting. They got to that capital city, they were able to recover the books, and they escaped the city once they realized they were being followed, just narrowly. And they are now on their way to the next closest sea. They don't have a whole lot of guidance on what direction to go, but they're trying to translate these books because they're in an ancient text that isn't spoken anymore, and there's no roots for. There's no way for them to translate it. Someone even tried to do comprehend languages, and for whatever reason, that did not work for them. I know why, but spoilers. So, I've gotten myself in way too deep. I have to write 3 books now. We already did 1. So I wrote their first book. I called it Children of the Earth, the beginning, and it's basically a history of the origin of the gods. Obviously, it's not a full-blown book, but it gives them a basic outline of everything that needed to happen. And from there, they got some history on something called the Tidal Wars, which is more of the history of this ocean. Pretty sure my husband just got home, so he might be joining us. So I've got my map of the ocean sphere. Hi.
You done?
Nope. Join me.
What am I doing?
Sitting your ass down.
Oh, future plans. I should read that.
Yes, future plans. Actually, that's from a while ago.
Oh, okay.
My husband's here. He just
I'm
got home
home
from work, and I'm terrible at time management, so he's going to join us. So I was just talking about kind of the basic outline of the campaign and how we started with that inciting incident with the dragnets, and then we went from there to Aerolia's brother's backstory, and then from there to her parents, to the underground 7-armed sea star dungeon.
Right.
With all that stuff in the flashback. I didn't get too much into it because it would be such a long story. Again, I'm sure Joe would be happy to join us if we want to get into some of the actual campaign material one of these times, like a campaign diaries or something.
Yeah, definitely.
If people are interested in that, they just need to let me know.
Yeah. I can tell a Lauren story.
Oh, God.
So I broke her campaign in session 2.
I mentioned it earlier.
Ah.
I did not get into it. I was like, go watch Metagamers Anonymous. We talked about it numerous times there.
Oh, yeah.
So I just got to Pavla Petri, and then you guys are on your way to where now? Well, you're already in Biscayne.
Yeah, say we're in Biscayne. We found out that...
It's another sea.
Yes.
Not a capital.
The Sea of Biscayne, and we...
This is my Tidal Wars notes. It's not complicated at all.
Right. And then we were trying to get information about the ancient gods without letting on that we're studying the ancient gods so we don't get killed by everyone. And
you actually had that really awesome move where you were in that bookstore?
Yes, we were in a bookstore and everyone else was looking for stuff, and I decided... We knew that the Kraken is the god of this sea, but a few of us knew of the Kraken as a childhood monster and told about in stories of, they attack in the middle of the night. I decided to play up the fact that I'm just learning to read, and I asked the shopkeep if he had any children's books about monsters and terrible badness, thinking, and I'm telling him, this will help me learn to read. I can't quite read these more complicated books.
And your new character really can't. He's not stupid.
Yeah, he can read. He has a decent intelligence.
Okay, you just play him so ho-dunk.
Yeah, he's from a small town. He's kind of like your farm boy. He's not dumb, but he's dumb in the ways of the world, not dumb in intelligence.
He's naive.
Yeah. Naive
Not
is a good
stupid.
one. So he found a book about the Kraken. Now, I don't remember. He had a different name for it. Was started with an S. I'd have to look in my notes.
Cecilia.
Cecilia. Mm-hmm. But the cover was very much the Kraken. And reading through this kid's story, we found out that, like, stay out of it comes from the west, it comes from the mountains.
The darkness in the far west or something like that, I said, of this came.
So it gave us a starting point to go and look for. Mm-hmm. So we are now heading west.
A direction, which, west is really just deeper into that sea, based on where you guys are on the map.
And that's where we ended last session, was heading that way.
Yep, cool.
Yeah.
Do you think you guys are going to go to the capital at all?
I don't know. It depends on what we find out west.
Ugh.
I think this is saying we should go to the capital. That's where the Kraken is. I knew it.
Well, I figured that would be likely that you guys would go there, so the next chunk of story I wrote was actually the capital.
The capital.
And I built up this, and you guys found some stuff about it in some books that you guys picked up in that bookshop also, the ones that Kim got that were a little bit more subtle, but it give you more of the history and culture of this sea, which is that it's very much... So you're an Eridon, which is a shark person, and so are most of the people of this sea. And the Eridon society is more matriarchal,
right? But
for whatever reason, the monarchy of this ocean is very patriarchal,
right?
Which is very different from what you're used to.
Yeah. So, now, I don't think my character hasn't quite picked up on that because he is naive.
Right.
He's never been around cities of Eridon. It's only been his small village that was I think we had like 30 people in that whole village.
Yeah. And it's mostly women.
Yeah.
So you're running into a lot of male Eridon now, which you did sporadically in the other places that you guys have been, but it's more...
Yeah. Which is also why I'd said that my character is just kind of, as we're moving through, watching, seeing what everyone's doing, because I've never experienced this before.
Right. And how do you feel we've done with, like, integrating character backstories into...
Oh, it's been fun.
Plot.
It's been a lot of fun. I mean, I know mine, I don't have a whole lot of backstory because we kind of made it up on the fly, which was fun.
I'm not mad at it. That was a cute little town.
That was fun.
I hope you guys go back there.
I do too.
Shark grass.
Yep.
Haha. See what we did there?
Yeah, the grass is shaped like shark fins. Teeth, sorry.
It's serrated.
Yes. But getting deeper into everyone else's backstory, the finding out about, I'm blanking on names, but Martha's god.
Oh, I don't know why I'm thinking Nagatir.
I keep wanting to say Erlia, but that's not the...
No, Erlia is Brittany's character.
Yeah.
God fucking damn it. Oh, are you looking for her god?
I'm blanking on her god's name on top of my head.
Umberly.
So yeah, starting to learn more that Umberly is an actual god and not just her like crazy ranting as she looks at a glowing stone.
Hey, that's fun.
Oh yeah.
That's going to be fun later because I'm an asshole.
Right. So it's been fun just learning more about everyone.
And I will say right now, some of the stuff about Umberly I've pulled from things that already exist in RPG lore, but it's not completely on par with all of that, so don't judge me. But she picked Umberly, so we incorporated that into the Pantheon.
I didn't know Umberly was from something else.
It's a pre-existing god in one of the different campaign worlds.
I know a lot of the Forgotten Realms, but when you start getting into Eberron or Dragonlance, I don't know as much on those ones.
I can't fucking remember where she pulled it from, but she pulled it from somewhere else.
Okay.
And I already had a goddess of like chaos and stuff like that, so her goddess of tempest and sacrifice played right into that, so I just swapped the names out so she could keep the god that she wanted.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yeah, another reason to do the questionnaires before you run, because then you can actually incorporate people's backstories into the stories more easily, I feel.
I don't know if you've said it on camera, but I know you've talked about, now that we've been going for about a year, redoing the questionnaire, and I'm kind of looking forward to that.
Yeah, I don't think I've said that on air here. I think I did on the podcast with our friends. I think it'd be interesting to do. Yeah. That'd be a fun one to go over with you guys, like, in front of the camera.
That'd also be interesting for mine, because, again, my original character who did the questionnaire left 2 sessions in.
No.
So,
have we even redone one for him?
No, we never did.
Okay.
Because we made up his whole story and village during campaign.
I completely left out the part where they ran into your old character.
Oh, yeah.
So when they got to the city with the library in it, we had discussed where his old character Loren wound up, and it just happened to be there, because I asked him which direction he would head out, and he wanted to go deeper into the sea, which would be the heart of the ocean.
Yeah.
And this capital city would be the best place for a bard to make some money. So And there were a series of inns you guys could have gone to, and you randomly rolled which one you went to, which just happened to be the one that he was at.
So there I am now having to play two characters in the same scene.
Did not force that shit, for the record.
And playing two characters that are so different and would not get along is very tough role-playing. I know Karash, my Eridon character, he just kind of hung back and watched because it was easier for me as a role player.
God, wasn't there a point where I was talking to myself as two different NPCs last session? I'm like, this is terrible. Please make it stop.
Even more fun is when you have an NPC that's part of the party and then they get in combat because then you're just fighting yourself. That's always awkward.
Oh, it was the crazy pet owner lady, the pet store lady, and Cornelius.
Yes.
That was a fucking weird conversation to have with myself.
Also,
old scholarly gentleman and crazy cat lady, basically.
Say also when you had Cornelius in the book, the guy at the library talking to each other. And
you know you liked the visual of him just like, got it, ooh.
got it, read it twice, got it. Oh, I wrote this one, and got it.
He's not written any books. He was too busy talking about the gut.
The cult we somehow started.
You did not start a cult.
Well, the cult of one person.
Yeah, let's leave that for another episode.
That's a fun story.
Jesus Christ. So how do you feel about the way that I build campaigns? Do you like that kind of chunk building process?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it gives me the opportunity to write your guys' backstories and more and incorporate all the quirks of your characters.
I'm still amazed at how much you do. I mean, all of this. I could never do this.
There's some other stuff in here too.
Yeah. I DM a game also, but I'm running the pre-built books, and that's enough work. I don't know how you're able to put this much into it and be ready for anything and everything. And
I'm never ready.
Well, again,
you're never fucking ready. If you're gonna write your own campaign material, you're never ready. Prep what you can and be flexible. That's all I have to say.
Again, as a DM, I understand that you're never ready for everything, but coming up with a full map and having history of all 7 seas and having this blood war all planned.
He doesn't know this part, so we're just going to take these off the map.
Yeah, I'm like making sure I'm not reading any of your stuff here. But having
most of the stuff that's exposed right now, you already know.
But having a map that detailed and having, not even just that, having history for every one of these seas and cities and knowing what's going on at all of them at all time, because when Lauren left, and this was session 2, and I said
fuck you, by the way.
And I text you because he snuck away in the middle of the night. So
you live here. You didn't text me. We had an hour conversation after. I thought.
Well, no, I texted you during session and said he left, and
and I was like,
and you responded, which way did he go? And I just said, away from the surface. And you responded. You gave me a little Post-it note that said he's in this city in this sea. I didn't even know of as a player, you had never mentioned that sea yet because
no, I didn't even have this map yet whenever I did that.
But the fact that in session 2 you already knew the capital and the next sea over's name blows my mind. I could not do this.
I mean, personally for me, and maybe this is an unpopular opinion, I think it's easier to do homebrew content because it's harder for you guys to tell when I'm bullshitting. Well, just being honest.
I say, as long as you don't...
Fuck, I did not plan for that. So I'm not grabbing a book and going, hold on while I check that section of the book and just give me 10 minutes so that I can read it because fuck you guys.
I say, I can tell at least as long as you don't have someone who's already played or ran or read the module, you can BS a lot of stuff and the players think it was all either in the book and have no clue and you're like, yeah, I had to make that up because it didn't make sense, or I said one thing 2 sessions ago that was wrong, and you guys actually wrote that down, so instead of being like, oh no, I screwed up, you're just modifying as you go along to make it make sense.
And there's always some modification as you go along. You can't get away from that.
Oh, yeah.
It's part of it. GMing, you always have to be on your toes.
Just because I've ran it multiple times, I've played in it multiple times. The Sunless Citadel module.
Yeah, that's a good one. But every time I've played in it, it's been a little bit different at points.
I believe between running and playing, I've ran through that module 5 times now, and every time the rooms are slightly different, or suddenly a room's in a different place, or...
Do what you gotta do, man.
Now, every time Meepo has died.
Poor Meepo.
He has never survived.
I like Meepo.
I know. Everyone likes Meepo, and then he dies. So, save Meepo.
Please save me. # save Meepo.
Right.
He annoys most people. Everyone's like, fuck Meepo. And I'm like, but I like him.
I've always had at least a couple characters who like Meepo.
Yeah.
And want to save him, and it doesn't work. Sorry, I know I sidetracked you.
Fuck you, man.
Yeah. It's almost like on one of our sessions where we just completely get off topic.
Every goddamn session.
You're like, I have all of this planned, and we're like, we're gonna go shopping.
Yeah, the story that you always like to tell is like, she had all these plans, and they were so great. And I'm like, cool, I don't need these anymore. Yeah,
we're literally in the middle of a session, and we're like, well, we're gonna go over here, and she just took her stuff and went, drop. Well, I don't need that. Everyone kind of like, oh, sorry. But
Shit
it was still
happens.
fun.
Shit happens, man.
I think that's the subtitle. D&D. Shit happens. It's either that or don't split the party.
Should I have a subtitle for this episode? It's D&D Shit Happens.
Right. Bumper sticker.
Ooh.
I'm sure that someone makes that.
I don't know. I should.
Right.
I keep joking about making t-shirts.
The Awkward Dungeon Master. Shit happens.
That sounds really weird.
Which is why I said it. I'm aiming for that blooper reel at the end of the episode.
I mean, that's probably going to stand right where it's at.
Again, with the derailing.
You asshat.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Hey, you told me to come on the video.
I did. It was a mistake. Okay. So, is there anything else that you think... Because you're fairly familiar with how I build things because you have to live with me.
Yeah.
Let me just say, though, the monsters underwater get real weird, and it's super fun.
It's also, and I know some of us still forget, but because we're underwater, we all can
go up.
Fly, because we'll just, I swim up and over and I come down the other side.
I can't get there because there's people in the way. I'm like, could go up.
Yeah.
Could go over.
It is interesting. It's a very different dynamic to any D&D game I played because every fight is 3-dimensional.
Right. And I almost wish I had some of those clear towers where I could move you guys around.
Yeah.
But I wish they were smaller too.
That's why a lot of times we use the dice.
The clear boxes.
I think you have some in here.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Further back. Here.
Yeah.
Hey, look, there was one on the table.
Yeah, and using those so we can put minis up there and it's like, oh, they're flying. Every D&D player pretty much has some of these. Chessex or other brands also use them, and they're real handy for just you can fly over someone. You put your mini there. They're handy.
Well. That's the way I build campaigns and how I break my husband's brain, apparently.
And I guess it's a good example of how we break your campaign and sidetrack everything.
Yeah, it really is. That happens a lot in games, I've noticed, the sidetracking.
Yeah.
If you have a way to keep people on track, please let me know, because it's fucking awful. That's all I've got on creating your own homebrew campaigns. Gee, I think the video's long enough.
Yeah.
42 minutes to edit. It's all good. I got this.
Yeah. Good luck.
Until next time, keep it rolling, adventurers.